During the course of the discussion, you will find that in the chat, there is an opportunity for you to present questions and indeed comments. I will keep an eye on the chat and hope to bring some of those questions, if you put them there, to our panelists. We have found in previous breakfast debates that there is a lively discussion going on in the chat as well. So do please keep an eye on the chat, as well as keeping an ear to and an eye to the discussion. I will introduce two polls and give you an opportunity, all of the participants, an opportunity to express their view on two short polls. I will launch the first now, if my colleagues would be kind enough to show everybody the first poll. I'm looking for the first poll, not yet received. The first poll, if I just remind everybody, the first poll will consist of a series of questions about the poor coordination between the public administrations, different administrative competencies, lack of harmonisation, different financial capacities, or lack of a shared system for data exchange. And we will be asking people which they regard as the main obstacles hampering cross-border disaster risk management. I will launch the poll after we've heard first, I think, perhaps, from Miriam Boveda, who is the head of the Smart and Sustainable Growth unit in DG REGIO, and of course brings many of the European Commission's policies and programs to the benefit of border regions. Miriam, would you be kind enough to speak? And I'll launch the poll after we've heard from you, Miriam. Thank you.
Many thanks, Andrew, and welcome to everyone. I'm delighted to be with you this morning to speak specifically about disaster risk management. We know that the EU faces multiple risks, including floods and extreme weather events that very often go beyond national borders, and they are aggravated by climate change. We know that natural and man-made disasters affect stability and growth and lead to injury and loss of life and impact environment and local social conditions. The combined impact of climate change poses specific sectorial challenges in the EU region, and border regions play a specific role in the European Green Deal. They contain many joint natural assets. These assets know no borders, and they also share common risks and crises such as flood and fires that request common responses. As part of the European Green Deal, a more ambitious EU strategy on adaptation to climate change was adopted in February 2021. And this strategy strengthens the efforts on climate proofing, resilience building, prevention, and preparedness. It also defines a wide range of actions, including for member states, regions, local level, and cities. The need to act beyond borders has been acknowledged, for example, in the context of this strategy, where it's indicated that the Commission will help ensure climate resilience, sustainable use and management of water across sectors and borders by improving coordination of thematic plans and other mechanisms such as water resource allocation and water permits. In addition, the EU framework on disaster risk management has been strengthened through the REACT-EU package as part of the enhanced Union Civil Protection Mechanism, with a direct link to the Sendai framework for action on disaster risk reduction at international level. The Commission has also published a guidance on the climate proofing of infrastructure. In addition, the flood directive requires that member states assess if all water courses and coastlines are at risk from flooding, to map the flood extent as well as assets and human at risk in these areas, and to take adequate and coordinated measures. We know that this issue is closely linked to climate change adaptation also. When we come to investment from cohesion policy, this investment should be targeted at promoting a transition to a more resilient environment. This includes the prevention of the most adverse consequences of disasters and regions' preparedness by ensuring sufficient capability for when disasters strike. Moreover, cohesion policy is needed to improve cooperation mechanisms among regions facing the same risks, which provide more effective possibilities. We see that such approach is existing in the Alpine strategy or in the Danube also. So cohesion policy can address various types of risks that are related or not to climate change. This, of course, includes weather-related risks, natural geophysical hazards, including earthquakes, and man-made risks. Specific sectorial strategy should be used where relevant to determine the needs for particular risks. So at cross-border level, we should look more specifically at prevention measures, such as actions to improve the knowledge base, preparation and implementation of disaster risk management strategy, awareness raising campaigns, flood protection and prevention infrastructure, or disaster proofing of buildings and networks, management of lands or forests and rivers. We should also look at preparedness measures, such as infrastructure, response vehicles, equipment, shelters, development of early warning systems, and training for civil protection units. We also need to take into account ecosystem-based approach at the outset. This means that nature-based solutions should be the preferred option wherever possible above hard or gray infrastructure. This approach includes floodplains, ecosystem restoration, afforestation, or natural water retention measures, for instance. We see a very important added value of cross-border cooperation in joint knowledge development and planning, including joint monitoring, forecasts, alignment of climate change adaptation strategy, also prevention, including joint management of cross-border forests, rivers, coastal zones, joint awareness raising campaigns. In the framework of preparedness, this added value includes cross-border early warning systems, interoperability of civil protection units, or facilitating of sharing of assets. To conclude, I will say that border regions play a major role in integrating elements of the European Green Deal into programs, and using programming also as an opportunity to formulate pathway for long-term transitions. And I would invite all participants to look at the Commission DG REGIO toolkit, which has been issued on how to implement sustainability transitions in cohesion policy. And this is for national and regional decision makers. I will include a reference in the chat. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Miriam, thank you very much indeed. I thought that was an excellent setting of the scene for our discussions, including some really interesting perspectives on the impact of the Green Deal policies in border regions, positive impacts. Thank you for that. Can I just return to our poll? And if my colleagues would be kind enough just to remind us again of the first poll and to give all of our participants an opportunity to comment via the poll on what they regard as some of the main obstacles hampering cross-border cooperation. If we can have a quick look at the poll again. Just bring it up kindly, colleagues, so you can see it. And we'll invite participants to choose up to 2 of these so that after our presentations that we're looking forward to now, we will have an opportunity to see what the participants' view is of the principal obstacles, the relative importance of those obstacles. And the poll needs to encompass a number of questions, which I referred to then briefly there, whether they, the choices are poor coordination between public administrations from both sides, i.e. lack of joint planning. Secondly, different administrative competencies between the national, regional and local risk management authorities. Thirdly, the lack of harmonisation of technical standards. Fourthly, different financial capacities in mobilising resources for crisis response. And fifth, lack of a shared system for data exchange. Those are the 5 options in the poll. So do please, all our participants, go to the poll and give us your view of what those 2 main obstacles are from that selection of choices. So let's turn to our presenters. Delighted to have 2 presenters this morning. I'll introduce first Marcela Glodeanu, who is head of unit in the managing authority for the Romania-Bulgaria programme. Be delighted to hear from you, Marcela, about how you are responding to disaster risk between Romania and Bulgaria there.
Good morning. Hello, Andrew. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I have a small problem with my voice, so I'm apologize for this.
We can hear you, Marcela, don't worry.
Great, great. So yes, you are right, actually.
No, we've lost you, Marcela. Can I just say we've lost you? You've gone mute. Ah, there you are. You're back.
I'm here. Sorry. So thank you very much. And it was a great opening. Actually, it has summarized everything that I wanted to share with you from our border region. So if we can continue with a presentation, or I would like to share with you some maps, just to have just to picture where we are and what we are facing. So we are geographically located along Danube between Romania and Bulgaria, covering the southern part of Romania and the northern part of Bulgaria. Of course, due to our geographical position, we face many risks generated by nature, but also generated by human activities. One of the most important risks in our area is related to floods due to Danube and its tributaries. As you can see in this picture, the floods are covering around all the rivers in the region, so almost our entire area is in danger due to these risks. To this, we can add other natural risks such as fires or earthquakes, which we have even epicenter in our region. The impact of this earthquakes goes beyond the borders, including to our neighbors in Bulgaria or even in Greece, depending on the magnitude of these disasters. As relates to technical to human activity risk, we have also risk related to nuclear plant that we have in the area, which are impacting our region. We have, for example, in Kozlodui and Chernavod, 2 nuclear plants that, in case of disaster, may generate huge impacts in the area. Of course, I've started with my job here within these programs 12 years ago. However, these programs are started in 2007, and since then, during 15 years, we have financed until now 44 projects that are tackling risk prevention and disasters. And these projects are trying to create the framework to intervene in case of floods or fire disasters, natural and other human risk, or to nuclear. Or we have many projects. I will share you just one with you after my presentation, and if you will have time. But what I want to explain is that these projects that we are financing are aiming to, on one hand, to raise awareness among civil society, try to explain and to get to involve the students, the pupils, the children, even from the kindergarten, on how to react and how to respond in case of disaster. And we had many projects that tried to do exactly this, to enhance the civil society involvement. And we had another type of projects that were dedicated to intervention, to prevention and intervention, what to do in case of this risk intervene. And here we have clear examples on how to approach, including the obstacles that were identified in the pool. We had projects that developed joint procedures and manuals in order to set up a system to intervene across border in case of disaster, depending on each type of risk. Of course, we had to train our teams to intervene, to develop and to deploy joint exercises and trainings of these joint teams. Another aspect that needs to be addressed is the infrastructure and the equipment that are essential in case of disasters. And the projects have purchased such equipment and try to set up this infrastructure needed. However, here I can say that one issue very important is to ensure the compatibility of this equipment in order to use it during joint interventions. Sometimes this can be an obstacle, but this can be also addressed through different actions. For example, we had projects that choose to have a joint procurement in order to purchase equipment that are compatible with each other. Also, the other projects choose to harmonize their technical specifications. So when they will receive this equipment, they would ensure this compatibility. Another issue that is major in our area, and I think in all cross-border regions that tackle this risk, is related to the intervention capability of interventions in terms of administrative issues, because we need to have protocols in order to go and to intervene in different situations with the territory of the other on the country partner. So many projects dealt with this aspect. They drafted and signed protocols to allow them to intervene depending on the risk when it was the case. Of course, this is a little bit difficult because it requires many resources, including human and financial resources, to set these protocols and later on to implement it. Even if it's an obstacle, it can be solved if it's a will there. Of course, to these types of projects, we could consider some examples. I will give you just one example, and I have here some pictures from a project that is very dear to me. It is Jerome, and it's related to the capability and intervention in case of chemical, biological, and radiological and nuclear disasters. These people have done a great job. They managed to set procedure on how to intervene in case of nuclear events. They acquit themselves, and many lives were saved due to this, because it was a heartbreaking story because sometimes the equipment wasn't so good or to protect their lives when they had to intervene in case of chemical or nuclear events. So this program, this project, offer them this possibility to equip them and save lives, and to be very sure that when they get to do their job, they will do it in a safer manner. So I could speak for hours about our projects in the region and how the program Romania-Bulgaria it's tackling and coping with the risk and disasters in Romania-Bulgaria region. But I think I will let our participants to share their experience. And if you have time, you can watch a small presentation on this project and to see how they are preparing to intervene in case of this kind of disasters. So thank you very much. In case you have questions here.
Thank you very much, Marcella. That was really interesting. And if you were kind enough to put the link to the YouTube video on chat, that'd be great. And I know participants will be interested to view that and see more about it. Fascinating. Thank you very much. Could we please take additional contribution from, as it were, the front line, as it were, from Dr. Aldo Primiero, who is an environmental engineer working for the Civil Protection Office of Friuli Venezia Giulia region and a participant in the CROSSIT SAFER project representing Italy in that. Aldo, would you be kind enough to tell our breakfast debate about your activities and experience?
Yes, good morning to everybody.
Morning.
I'm part of the leader of this CROSSIT SAFER project that I will present as an example of cooperation in cross-border risk management issue. I share my screen now. Okay. Yes, the CROSSIT SAFER project is in the Interreg program between Italy and Slovenia. It's a strategic project that its own title is about the cross-border cooperation between Italy and Slovenia for a safer region. The target region is the border area between Italy and Slovenia, but is involved not only the Friuli Venezia Giulia region, that is the northeast of Italy, but also the province of Venice, so the Veneto region from Italy, and then the Slovenian statistical region that are the Gorenjska, Goriška, and Obalno-Kraška that are near the border between Slovenia and Italy. We have long tradition of cooperation about specific risks in this area because we have common river basin like the Isonzo Socia river basin. We are in a seismic area where we are affected by earthquakes in the past along the border with the effects on both sides. In the past, we developed a cooperation about single risk. In this project that is inserted in the institutional cooperation axis, we wanted to make another step trying to enforce the cooperation for every kind of risk in this area. Especially focusing on events that have a middle impact. Those events that not involve the European civil protection mechanism, so at state level, but even smaller emergency that affect some municipalities or small area that have an impact on population, and that can be faced in a better way with the cooperation of the neighboring habitat and neighboring forces on both sides of the border. For this project, we tested the cooperation on the cross-border area between Italy and Slovenia. This is this line along the between Friuli and Slovenia, but also the cooperation between a cross-regional border, because also in Italy the Organization of Civil Protection have a national framework and a regional framework, and so there is a need also to improve the cooperation between the border between the Italian regions for common problems like rivers that are on the border and other kind of risk like forest fire in the mountain area that can easily involve this border area, and sometimes it's not easy to have a coordinated intervention for this area. For this reason, we started this project with the analysis of also the current state of the art of the cooperation, because there are existing protocols between municipality, province, and region, but it's not an homogeneous organization and cooperation. So we try to analyze the state of the art and then to improve to have a full coverage for every kind of event or kind of area scale. The project have 5 work packages. The technical one are the 3.1 is about the joint cross-border protocols of intervention in case of disaster, and these protocols were designed at the cross-regional between Veneto and Friuli Venezia Giulia region in Italy, but also between Italy and Slovenia, especially for cooperation between firefighter corps, according to the analysis that was performed. Then there is the work package about the harmonization of risk management procedure in the CROSSIT SAFER cross-border area. Is a work package about especially prevention and preparedness, analysis of risks and maps, and to share the knowledge, also the scientific knowledge this. And then the last work package was about the education and training activities, more practical one, but the work package that the main role to know each other, work together, also make some education campaign for population to have a better involvement and knowledge of the procedures and how to manage the emergency. I give you some example of the preparedness activity that were performed in the project. We elaborated some risk mapping about the seismic risk, forest fire risk, especially we focused on the problems of forest fire in the near the sea areas that are touristic area where the risk is very high because the population is high, especially in the summer season. Then we analyzed also the common resources that can be used, trying to put in a common database the available resources in terms of equipment and specific forces that can be used for this emergency intervention. Then we worked on protocols for specific risk or for general cooperation, and on the SOAP are the a standard operative procedure because it's important to know the organization of the rescue activity and also civil protection that is different according to the different administrative organization of the two countries and also the different regions also at the Italian level. And then we make a lot of also training with the participation of people for both countries, both regions to work together and understand how each organization of civil protection or firefighter works. The other work package focused on mainly on also on response. So we analyze the rescue contingent available in the area. So which resources are available from Veneto region, Friuli, Venezia Giulia region, and Slovenia. The different emergency plan, but also we make a lot of exercises. Unfortunately, the pandemic emergency, especially in the first part of the project, create a lot of difficulties to make some exercises with a lot of people involved, but according also to the pandemic measures, we succeed in make some exercise involving also population, the different organization, and working together to understand how to improve the cooperation for facing the different kind of scenario. This is an example. The list of the partners are 9 partners with different organizations, so regional governments, municipalities, national organization of firefighter, provinces, also the university. So we tested a cooperation of different organizations in order to face the different problems that are to put together different organizations and different responsibility also in the risk management and risk intervention. But this common work is the first base to ensure the knowledge of the plans and also a personal knowledge that this cross-border project created. That is the one of the key point when an event happens and we have to face in a better way. Thank you.
Aldo, thank you very much indeed. That's really interesting and very helpful. Can I, before we move on, can I just pick up one question, but perhaps please both for you and for Marcela. Clearly, these are not only this is not only planning being conducted by the institutions in your regions, but you're undertaking physical exercises, trying to understand what the actual physical results are. And that, of course, is involving the public. And hopefully you are kind of in the process bringing forward for the public an understanding of the potential for disasters and the response mechanisms that are being put in place. How have the public been responding? Do they respond with a sense of alarm or a sense of reassurance and greater confidence? Marcela and then Aldo, what do you think? How has the public responded?
May I take it first?
Please, yes.
Okay, so speaking from the project side, we had projects that approached children in the schools, in the kindergartens, and they are very happy to be involved in such activities to learn how to deal with disaster and how to react. And it was very nice to see this type of results. So they had even a toolkit, for kindergarten on how to react in such situation. Now, if I'm speaking from a program point of view, we had to carry out surveys to see exactly how the general public and citizen, general public and the institutions in the area are feeling towards the projects, interventions, and if we manage to make a difference in the area. And I can say that they were satisfied, and the results that we received were positive. Actually, our intervention had led to the increase of our capacity to intervene in case of disaster. So we had positive reactions from their side.
That's very interesting. Thank you. Aldo, how have the public responded to the preparations and some of the exercises you've been undertaking?
We make different kind of exercises involving population. Usually are involved the schools for evacuation, for earthquake. These are the usually more successful because younger people react very well. In the project, but we tried also an exercise with the evacuation of a common population affected sometimes by flooding of a small river. So it's not a scenario of a bigger flooding, but a situation that is quite frequent. And also unexpectedly, because moving on Saturday morning, people that have his own activity and tell them, okay, you have to leave your house and go to the shelter prepared. We were not optimistic at the beginning, but at the end we had a success because we have at least one person for family in this village area that was evacuated or registered in the shelter area. And also talking with these people, they appreciate this and demonstrate this approach also of resilience and responsibility for this. Maybe the reason of the success was also the scenario was a very scenario closed with their experience, not a centenary event that maybe nobody heard, but there was something that they proved more often, and so they participate, understanding that they also their role, active role in putting safety their own parents and their relatives and also their own houses in this way.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Aldo. If I may now, I'll just take, let's have a look, please, colleagues, at the results of our first poll, looking at the challenges and the relative challenges. You could bring up the results of the first poll, please. So if you recall, people had 5 options to choose from and could choose 2. So what we see here is that the largest number is the challenge of coordination between public administrations on both sides, joint planning. We've been hearing about good examples. Alongside that, administrative competencies. So to some extent, that may well be linked. Those are linked challenges, the competence of administrations and their coordination. Relatively few people thought financial capacities were the principal obstacles. Some harmonization of technical standards, a number of people thought that was a problem, which indeed Marcella quite rightly pointed to the importance of getting those standards right. Data exchange, a significant number of people do think there is an issue with data exchange to enable the warning system to work well. So let's launch the second poll now, and then we'll bring those obstacles and challenges back into the discussion. But we'll launch the second poll now, which is looking for the advantages. We're always positive here. And here, likewise, if you would very kindly identify which 2 of these you regard as the most important advantages of the cross-border disaster risk management programs. And you can see there joint solutions, more effective response, capacity in the emergency services, awareness and participation amongst citizens, saving lives and reducing the socio-economic aftermath. So let's turn to our panel, please. We have heard our panelists comprise Miriam, from whom we heard first, from Marcella, and indeed from Aldo. And additionally, if I can just introduce two further panelists, Angela Iglesias Rodrigo, who is head of the Department of Defense Against Forest Fires from the Ministry of Ecological Transition and the Demographic Challenge in Spain. And if I could also please introduce Ignacio Sanchez Amor, whom I will, if he will forgive me, call Nacho, member of the European Parliament, group of the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats, but who has had a wealth, he will perhaps introduce us to the wealth of experience that he has had of how cross-border regions can be supported, both from his own experience between Spain and Portugal, and indeed through the institutions and the programs of the European Union. I wonder, Nacho, may I come to you first in our panel and say you saw some of those challenges, particularly the difficulties of getting the level of competence and cooperation between administrations on two sides of a border where they have to respond to these potential disasters. How, in your experience, have people been dealing positively with that, and how have they used some of the programs available to do so?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, the DG Radio, for this kind invitation. My best regard to Ricardo Ferreira, a long friend, a friend from many years dealing with Spanish-Portuguese border, and Martin Guillermo, who is the Secretary General of the European Association of Border Region, that I was Vice President in 2 different periods. Listen, Andrew, from my experience, and my experience is not updated because I leave this position for 3 years. But what is the target of risk management in a border? Is to double the resources. This is the target. Of course, there are resources, there are skills, there are means in one side of the border. Or why don't we count with the near resources instead of calling for new resources to the other part of the country affected? And for that reason, I think stock taking is a useful tool, and we have to take into account that in the most of the countries, the border regions are more depopulated, and for this reason, there are less resources than in the big cities, normally in the coast, normally in the center of the country. This is a question we have to deal with. Because for this demographic reason, there are no the same resources that we stock in the big cities. Then the first step is to know what resources exist on the other side of the border, and this is the stockpile. And what is the access? What is the way to access these skills? That means you have to identify an interlocutor. You have to define what is the way to address in a most speed way this interlocutor who can decide the deliver of the means immediately. That means to have a non-bureaucratic heavy red tape procedures, because if not, at the end it could be useless. And we have, for me, the reason that has been not mentioned for the colleagues, when we talk about disasters, mainly we are dealing with law enforcement bodies, probably military or similar, police or gendarmerie or that kind of bodies, and even the very hierarchical bodies like firefighters and even medical. And for that reason, this is a question we have to be aware. This is not a level in which we can improvise. This is not the case when we are dealing with military, with law enforcement. The procedure has to be clear from the very beginning. You can't improvise. You can address being a major to try to be in contact with a military unit on the other side. For that reason, when we deal with this kind of personal, law enforcement, military, paramilitary, very hierarchical bodies, the procedure has to be clear from the very beginning. It has to be exist before you can improvise this when you are under the pressure of a disaster. And for that reason, and you have to know, mainly in many countries, that kind of bodies depends on the national authorities. That means another layer of difficulty. It's not the same to call to a major, it's not the same to call from one side of the border to the regional structures on the other side. If you have to count with military and in other aspects, you have to deal with national level, and this is not as easy as if you are dealing with your regular interlocutors in the cross-border cooperation, even because the attitude. But the question is, if these kind of bodies, law enforcement, military, firefighters, are engaged and committed, they are highly effective. But they have to receive the orders by the channel of command, to be very clear, to be precise, and when they are engaged, when they know the procedure, they are highly effective. And this is an asset we have to try to today. The other side, and I talk from my experience, and when Angela probably knows very well than myself how is the current situation, is the technical issues always can be overcome with more or less imagination. Allow me to explain what happened when we had a different radio channel in the towers watching the forest, and the Portuguese and the Spanish, they had different devices or different radio channels, and we always sent our machines to them. Then they have two machines, the Portuguese and the Spanish one, and that means they are able to attend and to be heard from the other side. But there are other cases in which it's more complicated. I don't know, Angela, how it is, but I remember when we sent in some occasions to Portugal some planes to fight forest fires, and there was problems with the identification of the planes, with the flight plans, with the authorization and the permits, because the authorities who asked for the plane were different than the militaries taking care of the aerial space of the country. And we had that kind of problem. Other problem, for example, when you call from one side of the border to the 112 services, sometimes you are directly directed to the 112 services to the other country. That means this country and this 112 center has to be aware immediately to transfer the call to other 112 center to the other side. But we encountered at that time that the Portuguese protocols, they didn't allow to transfer the call. That means one person in the Spanish border, they called the 112, they will transfer because the roaming system and the companies working in the border to the 112 in Portugal, and in Portugal the protocol does not allow easily to transfer them. But I think these technical problems can be solved. I think, and I'm finishing, Andrew. There is other situation in which the problem is not to double the resources, but to choose who is taking care of security issue. I don't want to talk about disaster. For example, small boats anchor in a border river. Anchor for months. For people who is using a small boat, judge, and who is, of course, if the boat is in one shore, is the one country or another. But if the boat is anchored in the middle of a border river, it's not as clear who can deliver, who can take care and watch what are the activities of this board. For that reason, I think we have to encounter some kind of horizontal aspect of this risk management in border and try to tackle them under the umbrella of course, different administrative powers, different political structures, different means. But I think the technical issue could be solved if the political will is clear and if we have the procedure. And for me, this is the key question: to know who has to call to whom to trigger immediately the mobilization of the resources on the other side of the border. Thank you.
Yeah, Ignacio, thank you very much indeed. You rightly referred to the recent experience which Angela will be able to bring to this. I was very interested, Angela, if you would be so kind as also to, obviously you have had a requirement to respond to some very difficult forest fires in recent years. Can you give us some reflection of how well some of the preparations stood up to the reality of having to combat those, and how much learning there was in the response, how much flexibility you had to have in the response that you made to those? Because I think Nacho is making the absolutely obviously correct point that chains of command require standard operating procedures and protocols to be in place. But I'm afraid my own experience is that when you encounter a disaster, you suddenly find that things don't always behave in the way they did in the scenario or the exercises.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. First of all, thank you for inviting me to be here. And thank you, Nacho. I really underline all your reflection. This is a demographic approach for emergencies, but I would also say it's a landscape and forest management approach, not only emergency approach, at least concerning wildfires. And about those technical problems in one of those operations, we go to Portugal, or Portugal came to Spain. We have managed to solve it with a person of a liaison officer. It is very easy. You just have to have one person making the liaison. You put one of your liaison officer in the Portuguese team put one of liaison officer in our team. That person has the right communication, has cartography, knows the procedures of their own resources. So that's the easiest way. At least at first, it seems that you are putting too much importance of this person. You don't have many people and you have to take one of your best officers to the other side, but this is the most effective way. Why? Because talking about having a cross-border disaster risk management, at least as concerning wildfires, and at least in Spain, it's impossible to have a single management system, because even in Spain, we have 17 regions, and each region has its own risk management system. So from our side, we have seen it is no good to talk about standardizing this management system, but to harmonize them and to try to understand better the other part with training, with exercises, and so on. But please pay attention that when we talk about exercises, we sometimes think about big exercises taking months to prepare and so on. And we have realized that it's much more effective if you make many small exercises, about 3 hours, 4 hours, on very specific issues. You want to work about communication, perfect. You want to work about aerial coordination, perfect. And also in Spain and in Portugal, and that was said in the first pool, there are different competences. The administration is not the same in Spain than in Portugal. So please do this exercise with your partner, the one that you are dealing with in an emergency. Because, for example, in Spain now it's a very political person who is talking with a very operational person in Portugal. So at the beginning, it is difficult to have this political person speaking with a firefighter commander. Now they are starting to talk, and that is how it works. So a small exercise is very effective, and please find your focal public. So do it with the person you are dealing with. And I don't know if that answers your question, Andrew.
No, that's really helpful, and I think the it's a practical reflection of the fact that working with emergency services and the what we think of as the uniform services, working with them, one has to be respectful of the professionalization there, and they have to be professional, talking to professionals and trying to agree their operating procedures. It's not, and it's very difficult for them, as Nacho was saying, if they have a chain of command who have their own processes and procedures and requirements, to mesh the two together at a local level if there is any inconsistency. But harmonization, the point you made, harmonization, trying to understand how they can be brought together is really important. I wonder, before we take further views in the panel, I want to do two things. Firstly, bring back the results of the poll, if my colleagues would be kind enough to do so. The second poll, looking at advantages. So what we've found amongst our colleagues is that there is the greatest, and happily so, because it's really, I think they've correctly identified its importance. The greatest response is in increased responsiveness to natural disasters. And then alongside that, equal numbers of people have identified the capacity amongst the emergency services and of saving lives, which is obviously linked. The awareness and participation of citizens and joint solutions gets fewer responses, but I think it's entirely understandable that that response process is very important. But we also have a question in the chat, which I want to close that and bring up the question, which I think has been put from Dr. Niedermeyer. And I wonder whether this might be something I could put to you, Marcelo, if I may. He says one of the obstacles is legislative competence and regulations between neighbouring regions. How has this been resolved? Is a European framework regulation intended to facilitate this? There's also the question of the effectiveness of the EU civil protection mechanism. I wonder, Marcelo, have you between Romania and Bulgaria, have you been able to use European legislative frameworks as a mechanism for enabling your collective work?
This is a very tough question. Actually, I know that this different legislative provision between Romania and Bulgaria exists. With the projects try to tackle it. As I said, protocols needed to be signed in order to intervene cross-border on different events. Yes, it is an obstacle, and it needs to be further addressed by not only by the projects financed by Interreg programs, but also at the other level, because how Nacho said, also the political level needs to be involved, and depends on the chain of command and depends on the approach that it is used, military or civil one. But yes, developments needs to be further on continued. As regards the mechanism, joint mechanism of intervention, I don't know clearer examples between Romania and Bulgaria of using this mechanism, but I know that Romania has requested and received help during this mechanism. We had floods, we had fires, and we received support from our partners from European Union. But also I know that our firefighters had intervened and joined such initiatives. For example, I remember last year or 2 years ago, it's not very clear, it's fuzzy in my head. Greece has faced many wood fires and forest fires, and they intervened. So it is a good example of how joint force, how different partners can join forces and intervene in such disasters. So other examples, clear examples, I don't have, but this is from my knowledge.
Thank you very much. Nacho, you wanted to comment on this?
Yes. In my view and in my long experience, the problem is not at the different legal or political or administrative level. The question is, you have to identify the interlocutor on the other side having your competencies. And this interlocutor has to know that you are the interlocutor. This I'll give you an example. When Portugal asked to the Spanish government to be able to send people for the deliveries for the birth of the child to the other side of the border, the Spanish government has to say, we don't have hospitals. The hospitals are for the regions. Then your interlocutor is Junta de Galicia, Junta de Extremadura, and the same. The question is not. The question is you have to broke this protocol approach. This is not about minister, mayor, region. The question is who has the competence you need to complete your needs, and then you have to be able to reach this person because this is the right person to approach. Of course, this is good to have European legal framework to deal with these issues. But if you don't have this, the question is to know very well who is your interlocutor in the other side. And I think that functioned and has functioned perfectly.
Thank you. Aldo, I just wondered if it was a very interesting reflection there from Angela about the value of many focused, perhaps slightly smaller exercises rather than just trying to invest everything in one very big exercise. I could see from your presentation that you've been undertaking a number of joint exercises. Is that your experience too, that if you can break the problem down into a number of practical examples, you can undertake practical exercises to identify what the procedures and protocols should look like?
Yes, I think the possibility to have many small exercises specialized on some issue permit to focus on a specific aspect and to resolve the single problem. When we have a big emergency, you have a lot of single small problems, and if you have in peacetime experience trained on a single piece, then you can put together all these things. Also because, as Nacho said, you have to find for every problem the correct interlocutor on the other side. So if you have experience how to resolve the communication problem or the 112 problem in a small exercise with this single problem, then okay, you divide the big problem in smaller problems where you are trying to solve or to find a solution. So this approach, I think, is very good. Also, in our experience, it's good. Also, because big exercises, sometimes you work for months or years, and then maybe you have a real event, and you could realize also what you have prepared for a long time.
Thank you very much. Aldo, I wonder if I might move to Miriam. We need to bring our discussion to a conclusion. Unfortunately, time is against us. It's always our experience that there are many issues that our debates bring forward, but not always enough time. But nonetheless, I wonder if you might have a look at the two things. One, there is a question which is up on the chat, which refers to one of the biggest experiences in the Danube tributaries for flood risk management. Can that be supported under the European Green Deal to a greater extent? That clearly is something you will be familiar with. But also, I wondered if you might also say something by way of conclusion, particularly about how this is seen from the citizens' point of view across Europe in the border regions. How are citizens responding to this? Miriam, over to you for some any conclusions you also want to give us.
Thanks, Andrew. Maybe just to answer very quickly to the question on the EU civil protection mechanism, I wanted to say that this mechanism was activated 114 times in 2021, which is quite a lot, I think. And we responded to several extreme events such as the pandemics, the coronavirus pandemics, floods in Belgium, or forest fires in the Mediterranean, the Western Balkans, and Austria, and also repatriations from Afghanistan, and earthquake and a hurricane in Haiti. So we see that there are many extreme events occurring where we have been present at EU level. I found the exchanges and the discussion very rich today, and I come to the conclusion that prevention, preparedness, and response are the two sides of the same coin. So the better prepared and the more prevention you have in place, the better you will respond. And as Nacho said, in an emergency situation, the worst preparation is revealed immediately. So how do we have to act? And we see that the citizens who are concerned in the border and see the immediate issues, they are not the ones who will act immediately, because very often the response it's at a national level where the emergency equipment and teams are located. The two examples on what can be done to better prepare, both on the Romanian-Bulgarian border, where we see there both technological and natural risks. There is a very strong need to take action, and the Jérôme project was very illustrative of what can be done in terms of preparation. And also in Italy, how we need to have a stronger coordination and to have all stakeholders on board to be able to give a better response when the emergency occurs. It's very important also to include citizens in the preparatory action and to make them aware of what type of actions are needed is also key. What Angela raised and these ideas of having liaison officers in each team to give a quicker response when an emergency occurs was a very interesting response. And to have smaller exercises than big ones is also interesting. What I found also very interesting is that we have different member states who speak different languages, and this question of giving an emergent response in different countries has not been often raised. So I find this interesting that in an emergency we seem to all speak the same language. Thanks very much.
Miriam, thank you very much indeed for those concluding remarks. Can I just say a big thank you to all of our presenters, Marcela, Aldo, Nacho, Angela. It's been a great pleasure to hear from you, and it's been very practical information and discussion as well, and practical examples, and I think all of our participants will have very much appreciated that. Can I remind all participants to look at the chat? There's one or two good, useful bits of information coming up on the chat, including from Marianne Bludeau and from Ricardo, so do look at the chat. Our colleagues in DG Regio will be taking the benefit of these discussions and incorporating them into the material available through the Border Focal Point Network. So do please keep a close eye on the website, not least for the opportunity to join in future debates, which will be advertised there. Final big thank you to Miriam, Angela, Nacho, Aldo, Marcela. Great contributions, all of you. Thank you very much indeed. And Have a very good day, everybody. I bring our discussion to a conclusion now and wish you all great success in all of your work in all of the border regions across Europe. Thank you very much indeed.